Hello, I'm Sylvester McCoy, and I'm following the nerd.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a very special podcast right here on Following the Nerd. I am Todd Black. You might know me from all my reviews that I do of the various DC Comics and other shows, but I am also a massive Power Rangers fan, and so it is my honor to introduce to you...
Hi, I'm Ryan Parrott, and I'm Following the Nerd.
That's right. Now, if you don't know the name, Ryan Parrott is the writer of the Go Go Power Rangers comic book series currently under Boom Studios. And we're talking to him today because he and Kyle Higgins, who writes the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic at Boom Studios, are teaming up to do a massive event. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It's a massive event called Shattered Grid. And as a Power Rangers fan myself, I've read both series, and it's my honor to have you here, Mr. Parrott, so we can talk about this. So just for those who don't know the Go Go Power Rangers series, tell people what that specifically is about.
Oh, okay. So Go-Go Power Rangers, it takes place, it sort of follows along after the original pilot from the 1994 series,
Yeah.
Is that correct? I can remember their exact date. 1994 series, and it sort of follows after the original pilot, and you sort of, it sort of, I don't want to say it fills in the gaps because that's not the way to pitch it, but it sort of tells smaller stories that sort of focus on more of what it would like to actually be Power Rangers living in a world where you really have to hide your identity from your parents, and that you're still learning about your Zords and your powers and all that stuff. So it's a lot. It centers a lot more on like the personal lives of these kids and tries to treat them with sort of like emotional realism and whatnot. And just sort of fits into that. It's the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series that Kyle's doing, Kyle Higgins. It follows the team after Tommy joins up with it. So it sort of takes place about a year and a half before my series, but they do take place in sort of the same canon and all that stuff. So it just sort of follows them. I mean, the best way I've been pitching is like if you like the Ultimate Spider-Man run that Bendis did, I think if I got that wrong, then you just automatically kick me off the podcast.
Bendis created the Ultimate Universe.
Yeah, so if people like that original Amazing Spider-Man run, like that's sort of the same tone we're going for. So it's like fun stuff. But yeah, I get to do homecoming stories and football game stories and all that stuff. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's interesting because of the contrast that you mentioned that the Mighty Morphin under Mr. Higgins, they're talking about how everything changed when Tommy came into the picture, and now with your stories, which is going to be going on issue 9, isn't it? 8 or 9?
7. Yeah,
okay.
We're hitting. Oh yeah. The 7 comes out soon, and then going into Shattered Grid will be starts with 9. Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, that's right. Because it comes out. Your next issue comes out next week. I remember that now. Looking forward to it. But then, like with yours, you're focusing on the main 5 with some additions that we'll get to later. But I really like Go Go. I like Mighty Morphin 2. Don't tell Mr. Higgins I don't like that because I do. I like it's more intimate. You're showing, like you said, the more personal stories of these characters in a way that, not that Mr. Higgins doesn't, but in a, like I said, more realistic way. Like you're telling a homecoming story, like that's where they are currently, and then you find out how they met each other before the forming Zordon, and I loved the Zach Kimberly the Salad Girl scene.
Did you? Awesome, that's great.
I was like, wow, he just did that. I was like, okay, so I like it, which really brings me into the whole Shattered Grid. So for those who don't know, get out from under your rock and go onto Google and type in Power Rangers Shattered Grid. Because basically the crux of the story is this. In Mighty Morphin, the comic series, Mr. Higgins, I apologize.
I love that you're calling him that, but you can call him Kyle. It's okay.
I was raised that way, so I call you Mr. Parrott, him Mr. Higgins.
Kyle.
Awesome. Kyle. He created a new character named Lord Draken. Which is an alternate universe, which I love, an alternate universe version of Tommy Oliver, who did not reject Rita's power. He actually embraced it, actually fused the Green and White Ranger powers, and promptly took over the world.
Yes,
because that's what guys like that do.
Yeah, he was fun because like when he got that series, he was wanting to do that story from like obviously it's the first story, and he knew what he wanted to do. Yeah. But I was amazed. I think it took him 10 issues to get to the reveal of Draken. And I'm like, and that was his pitch to me. He's like, I want to do this story. And I was like, what are you going to do for 10 issues? He's like, I'm going to slow burn it, man.
He did.
And he did. And I think that's what it works so well, is it was a slow, real, like if you go back and reread it, like from issue 1, like it's very clear what's going on. If you know that where it's going, it's just fun. There's a lot of Easter eggs and fun stuff, but yeah. Lord Draken is obviously the center of Shattered Grid as well, with his return and how he will. This time he is going after not just the Rangers of, I guess do you call it the Prime timeline? I guess that's it's the easiest way to refer to it.
I just call him Mighty Morphin.
Mighty Morphin, there you go. So he's going after the people of the Mighty Morphin, but also we're going to start seeing that there are other Rangers from other areas.
Timelines.
Timelines, yeah. It's everybody has their own specific ways. It's dimensions.
If we're being technical, if we're being absolutely technical, from Mighty Morphin up until, let's see, what was it? Time
Zeo?
Force? No,
probably Time Force. It's space.
It's Time Force. Everything from Mighty Morphin to Time Force. No, Wild Force, because Wild Force comes after Time Force. Everything from Mighty Morphin to Time Force is one Earth, one timeline. And then after that was when Saban gave the rights to Disney, and then that's when we started getting all these different stories, like RPM, which is set in a different dimension, and then that's when it gets a little more confusing. And then you had Megaforce, which is and isn't in the same Earth. It's complicated.
I'm going to take your word for it. Which one's your favorite? Which one do you like the most?
Oh, like all Ranger teams?
All Ranger teams.
Mighty Morphin.
Really? Okay, cool. Yeah, me too.
Here's my top 5. It's Mighty Morphin, then Zeo, then Lightspeed Rescue, then SPD and Time Force.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's fun because I've said this before, and I don't want to repeat myself, but it's crazy to me because Power Rangers is sort of like the American version of Doctor Who.
I like that.
And it's just it's concept of it's the only show that I know where everything sort of goes. It's it all happens in canon, everything. Well, within varying, like you just explained, how it does shift around a little bit. But what's so cool is everybody has their favorite. They keep shifting it out and bringing in new Rangers, but then that don't they don't reboot it all the time. They just say these are the new guys, and everybody has their favorite, and it's been on for 25 years, which is not many shows have. No. So I think it's fascinating, the fact that it's sort of the American version of Doctor Who.
I have never thought of it like that, and I'm a Whovian, and I review the shows for Following the Nerd. I have never thought, wow.
Well, just as we don't have the Brits are really great at having, with James Bond and Doctor Who, they created a character and then they basically allowed they created this incredible character that we get excited about new people coming into. Mm-hmm. It's weird. In America, it's the exact opposite. If somebody does a great job, we can't imagine another person doing that. Imagine if they redid Firefly. We'd all freak out. There's no way you can recast people. There's only one character that I think we have, Batman. Batman's the closest thing we have to James Bond, where it's we get kind of excited when they bring new people in. Potentially, yeah. But I don't know. It's sort of off topic. But that's the thing about Power Rangers that I've always been really impressed with. It's it's been on for such a long time, and it's got this really devout fan base, and everybody will argue about this is why I love this one and why I hate that one, and there's something great about being able to do that in a franchise. I love that.
And I think that's what the great appeal is for Shattered Grid, because just to recap a little bit, so Lord Draken was an alternate Tommy Oliver. He winds up in our universe, let's call it the Mighty Morphin universe, and now he, via the last issue, we'll talk a little bit about spoilers here, he breaks free of a prison, epically, epically, and now he's set his path on taking out every Ranger ever. In fact, the promo for the Shattered Grid is "No Ranger is safe."
Yes,
so now, as we found out, there's going to be a Ranger coming in who we will reveal in a second, coming in to say, we need to find Draken. He's threatening the Morphin Grid. Every Ranger is in danger, and, this is where the story kicks off. So, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you did a better job than I did. You should be writing this.
Can I? Is that an option?
I don't have that power, and I need to live and eat. So that's my only thing I got. That's Shattered Grid in a nutshell, man. I mean, I think you've kind of hit everything. Yeah. It's gonna be epic. Kyle is has a spreadsheet of all of the Rangers and is trying to interweave them together in interesting ways, and how they're going to interact, and why they interact is part of the story. I would tell you more, but I can't.
Of course.
And so I think that's the fun of it all, is finding ways to, because of the way the show was created, the different series were created. They always had the great crossover episode every season, but like that became, it was really hard to sort of bring everybody back in. But like I think what's great with what Shattered Grid can do is with the Rangers they're bringing in, like you can have people who never interacted before on the series can finally interact in sort of different ways, and you can see pairings that you never saw before, which I think will be a lot of fun.
Which is awesome. And I mean, the one Ranger we've had a few Rangers confirmed, but the one that is kicking it all off is apparently one of Kyle's favorite Rangers, which is Jen from Time Force, who is also one of my favorite Rangers, and as I mentioned, one of my favorite series. So like, and that makes sense, comic book wise, because like, well, she's from the future. We know they can time travel, so why wouldn't she come to the past and help out the Mighty Morphin people? So that's pretty cool. But you brought up an interesting question about our point about interacting with each other. Was that one of the hardest things for Shattered Grid? Was not necessarily bringing the characters in, because depending on how the story unfolds, there's obviously a way that they all mix together, but making sure that you're true to the characters that we know from the shows, because like Jen, obviously she's tough as nails.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't take crap, and then she's like easily one of the toughest, of the female Power Rangers, which is saying something, because we've had some great Rangers over the years, the lady Rangers over the years. And so was it important for you and Kyle to make sure that you nailed these personalities, so that you say, oh, that's totally Jen would totally say that, or something like that?
Well, I think, I mean, that's the nice thing about doing a book that's licensed and it's based on actors. You get to hear their voices, you can hear their characters, and we all have a very strong opinion and a very strong memory of how they sound and what they will do. So you don't want to get it wrong, because like you get Jen wrong and you'll be tarred and feathered. But I know the good news is Kyle spent a lot of time really prepping for this. Like he really spent a lot of time, working this thing out. And so because he had so much time, it was easy to sort of like really lock down on whose voices he wanted to use and how he wanted to do it. But yeah, I mean, it's always difficult, I think, writing a comic book, because like in regards to getting the actors' voices right, because we all hear the characters in our head differently. But sorry about that.
That's all right.
But it's. I guess the short answer is yes, it's hard, and I think the fun part is finding the voices that I also think it's fun finding the characters that people that had potential in the series that maybe were never hopefully or not used to their fullest extent. I think that's the other part, is like finding characters like there's, like you said, Jen. People like Jen a lot, but there's other characters in the Ranger universe that I think when you bring them in, you might be able to find a voice that they might not necessarily have had in the series, just because the story is a little bit more. I don't know. It's for an older audience, and it's a little more sophisticated than I think the original series was. The comic books, at least I hope the comic books are more sophisticated than the original series.
I like to think they are, because if you think about it, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was tailored to both kids and, let's be fair, like early teens, and so there was a lot of kiddish elements, which of course worked because that was the intent. But like with you, with Go-Go, you've made Zach a lot more prominent, which I know a lot of people have liked. Like you gave him great scenes where he got tempted by Rita and all that, and then like the salad girl scene, though, was classic. Like I don't think Zach had that in the series, at least not to my recollection, outside of the Zach focused episode. So
well, in regards to just Go-Go, I mean, like I think I have the easier time than Kyle does, because Kyle has to deal going into Shattered Grid. Kyle has to deal with all the different Rangers. And I'm a little bit more, because my book technically is, I guess, would be a prequel, even though I don't like to think of it as a prequel. I get to sort of just stick within the confines of the Mighty Morphin universe. So it allows me to sort of focus, like on you said, like more on those characters and fleshing them out, as opposed to bringing in new characters, which you can do, but you just got to be very
careful.
Yeah, perfect word. So you just have to be careful, because obviously there's I can't really say any more than that, but I will just say that that's been the fun. That's what I've been trying to do with Go-Go, is try and find a way to really flesh out all the characters' voices and who they are, and like for instance, like in the very first issue, like I was actually writing the scene with Jason where like it opens with him sort of at the juice bar, just sort of sparring in the morning, and Ernie comes in, and I realized that like outside of Jason being sort of a very courageous and sort of strong leader and a very noble person, I didn't really know much more about him than that. Like I didn't know if there was anything like I started trying to think about, okay, so this guy is a obviously devout martial artist, yes, and has strong leadership qualities, and everybody sort of looks to him, but it's not just because he's handsome, like there's got to be, yeah, hope not. And so he's proven it over time and time again in the series that he does the right thing and he makes the right decisions. So I started thinking about why would he be so interested in martial arts? And one of the ideas that I had was that maybe I know martial arts, I did a little bit when I was a kid, was just it's used to give people structure in their lives. It's used to give kids sort of a work ethic and it's designed to confine them and help them sort of focus, right? And I was thinking, well, maybe he was a kid who didn't have structure in his life. Maybe he was a kid who was a bully, or maybe he's stronger and bigger than everybody else. Did he use that to his, like, why did he get involved with that? And that's where I came up with that idea of like, maybe that's why it's a control substance for him. Like, and we're thinking like he was a little out of control when he's younger, and he's just like, since the age of 10, he was like, you know what? I'm doing this. And he's always afraid that he might go back to that. And so that was like a layer that I was able to find just because and I don't think they ever had the time to do that in the original series, but I was like, let's find that stuff. And so my goal in all of these things, like what you said, the Salad Girl thing, which I'm really glad you liked, I was like, what if they didn't know each other before? Like, what if they didn't like each other before? No. Like before they got powers? Like, is there a thing where like they weren't always the best of friends? These five, like they are five very unique characters from very different walks of life. Oh, yeah. I don't know about you. I don't have most groups aren't that. So it's interesting to me if they weren't always like, they weren't from the age of 5, like they've been hanging out in the same neighborhood and doing that. So it's been fun to find things and being able to play with sort of the flashbacks in the comics has been an interesting way of being able to sort of really flesh out the characters and try and find unique and surprising things that I always try to find, I try to find things that we take for granted and then sort of think, well, what if that's not the case? And it's funny how a lot of that's where the whole that's where the whole Billy Skull friendship when they were kids came from with this idea. I remember that. Yeah. So like I was just like, wouldn't that be interesting because I had a friend in when I was in junior high that I was best friends with, and then we went to different high schools. And I remember we were at I was at a volleyball tournament, and all of a sudden somebody started throwing stuff at the guys on the thing, and I turned around and it was him. And I was like, oh my God, that guy was my best friend in junior high, and now he's a bully. He's like throwing stuff around. And I was like, so when I was thinking about Billy and Skull, I was like, wouldn't that be interesting if they had that? So,
I like that. And then our Trini with her like overprotective mother, yes. And then Kimberly with her parents, and like the fallout of their divorce. I like, as a writer myself, I like these more character and driven things, and so I give you props for fleshing out the mythology in a way that's very, very special. So going back to go ahead.
No, I was gonna say the one thing is sometimes it's just finding it was like just the realism of the situation. Like if you think about it, like if you lived in a town like Angel Grove that every 2 or 3 weeks a giant monsters came into town, like how long would that population stay? Yeah. Robust.
which was one of, in my opinion, one of your best storylines. Not that they're all great, but I mean, which I have to say because you're here. And I'm joking. But like you talked about that. You was like, what would the fallout be after the first battle? People are freaked. There was a giant monster. There was a Megazord over there, and like, can we trust the Power Rangers and everything? Yeah. Like, what would the town be like? And I never thought about that, and so it was a really great story.
Well, I had a conversation with Daphne and Matt, were two of the editors on the book, and we had talked about it really early on because they've really been like a guiding force for the book. They knew kind of what they wanted the story to be when I came in. They were very specific about the time frame, and we worked together. But one of the things that they had said that they always sort of come to me and say, like, think about it even for like really think about the reality of the situation. And I remember there's this page in there when like Bulk and Skull kind of like come in. I think it's issue like 2 or 3 where they come in and kick the door in, and one of the kids flinches, like jumps out of his seat, and Trini has to calm him down. And he was like, I thought it was another I thought like it was another thing, and I was like, because like if I don't want to get it political, but like with all the school shooting stuff like that, you hear about like imagine going back to school after a school, that's just got to be if somebody slams a locker, you're gonna be on edge, and the idea that the whole city would be like that, but yet I just thought like taking the time to sort of explore those ideas, I just think makes it more real, makes it more it asks questions that you just sort of you have to haze over sometimes just because you have to get to the fights and you have to get to the action.
Yeah, you got 22 minutes and then
exactly. I have 22 pages and they're like, well, you got 5 of them, you got to fight a giant monster, so get to it.
I understand that struggle entirely with the comic pages, but you do a great job, and you make every issue worth it, which is important, as you said, like because it's a quote unquote prequel series. We got to find a new word because it's clearly not a prequel series. I mean, if you want to, you could say it's prequel in reference to the Mighty Morphin comic,
right?
Technically, but it's not a prequel to Power Rangers as a whole. So you got we'll have to think of a new word for you. But going back to Shattered Grid because this is a combination event between Go-Go and Mighty Morphin. I know you can't give spoilers, but like how key is Go-Go to the overall Shattered Grid story?
Good question. I would say that the event it's an event.
Yes.
I don't want to use the word crossover because that's sort of misleading. Yeah. That suggests that when I read original series stuff like that, you'd have to go from like Age of Apocalypse or something like that. You'd have to go from like it was this issue and then it would go to this one and this one, and it would. I always hated it when they would jump from series to series, because
they're still doing that.
Yeah, I know. It's it's funny. I wonder when they discovered that checklists were required because it was like, you know what I mean, and it was like the order in which you read them. It's so hard. But ours is just an event where like this thing happens and then you feel the first issue happens, and then it's like a seismic event that ripples through both series. Okay. So I would say that Go-Go is the best way I've been describing it is like if Shattered Grid, if we're all taking place, if this is Lord of the Rings, and Shattered Grid is Aragon's story, it's the one that has Helm's Deep in it, it's the one that has all the big action set pieces, right? But there's Aragorn, my apologies. Sorry. At least
Aragon is an entirely different book.
Oh, that's one with the dragon, right? I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. Aragorn. But also, to be fair, like, isn't his son like Arakan or something? Anyways, doesn't matter. Anyways, so my point is that's that part of the story. But I would say that Go-Go is more like the Frodo story, where like it's just as important. It's just settled. It's smaller character stuff. They take place in sort of the same story, and they bounce off each other, but they are sort of separate in that regard because they do take place in 2 different time periods. Yeah. So does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but it's very important. I think that if you did not read Go-Go, there would be stuff that happens in Shattered Grid that you would not understand. So in that essence, I would say check it out. Maybe you'll like it.
Yeah. Okay, so you probably can spoil this. How many issues of Go-Go are tied to Shattered Grid?
4.
Okay, 4. So
yeah, it starts with 9 and it'll run. 8's at the end of 8 is a prelude, sort of the similar way that 24 was for Mighty Morphin.
Yeah.
And then that will take us through 9, 10, 11, and 12. And 12 will be the last issue for Go-Go in regards to Shattered Grid. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Okay, that's good. Not that we need a checklist, but I just good to have the scope in mind.
No, it's good. I think 4 was fine. Like I was like 4 issues was plenty. Yeah. Because it sort of fit into it was great because I when they first came to me and were like, hey, do you want to do we're gonna do Shattered Grid? Do you want to be a part of it? Because there was a point where we might not necessarily have to be.
I like that. Would you like to be part of the arguably the greatest Power Rangers event since the All Rangers Together thing? No, I'm not interested.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was like, oh, maybe. Only because I'd spent so long trying to create sort of this I've been laying out a lot of story threads. I've been sort of building towards these characters, the ideas, and I have an idea for what the whole year is, like whole series. Like the first year, I knew kind of what the theme wanted it to be. So when they basically were like, here's what we want to do, I only wanted Go-Go to be a part of Shattered Grid if it was thematically correct. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Like I wanted to make sure that I could keep telling the story that I was telling in a way that would feel like you just didn't want it to be like you do all these very small stories and then all of a sudden giant war and like it feels like a different book.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that the story that I was telling and the scope and everything was at the same consistency. But what was really great though is when we figured out how we wanted to implement it into the story, into the series, the event. Sorry, it really worked well and actually was better than had it. I'm actually very happy that Shattered Grid came along because it was actually able to tie things together that I hadn't actually intended to tie together at this point in a really fun way. I know it's very vague.
No,
if you re-listen to what I said after you read the series, it'll make it a lot more sense.
Yeah. No, and I like that you hesitated because as we just talked about with like the whole checklist crossover events, there are the tie-in issues which we all hate, unless it's like key and paramount to the story, do we really need to read these tie-in issues? So I'm glad to hear that, Go-Go isn't like that. It's thematically relevant to Shattered Grid while still being true to what you're doing with Go-Go. So.
Yeah, I mean the thing that I always go to, and this is not me talking, hopefully not talking out of school, but like I don't know, did you ever read? I think it was J. Michael Straczynski's Thor run when he had when Asgard was landed on it was in the middle of Nebraska.
Broxton, Oklahoma.
Broxton, Oklahoma. Thank you. The people you're right. So you did read it, but I loved that run. I thought it was so much fun. It was really funny and clever. And then, and so it lasted and I love the concept of him hunting down the spirits of the Asgardians who were in modern day people, and it felt like that story could go on forever, right?
Yeah.
And then it was Siege of Asgard came in.
Oh, Siege.
And the minute it happened, all of the really fun stuff kind of went away, and it became this event. And I always thought, man, had they just left him alone to tell that story, I think it might have been one of the best Thor runs ever. And it just felt like it was. I think he was almost a victim of his own success, where he created this great story, and everyone's like, "This is so good, let's bring everybody in." Yeah. And I was like, "No, don't do that."
And I'm sure that Kyle Higgins will appreciate that because that's basically what happened to his Nightwing run.
Yeah, I can't talk about his Nightwing run.
No, I'm just saying.
Yes.
Yeah,
there was a. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
that was a tough time because I wrote Get to Gotham with him, and we wrote that together. I came in wrote the last 3 issues with him. It was my first comic book thing I'd ever done.
Nice.
And and I came in and wrote the last 3 issues, and we had to write all of the issues. I think in 2.5 weeks to get it done because the New 52 was launching.
Oh yeah.
And that was a really difficult time, I think, for creators across the board who were taking over new books because there was just a lot of excitement about it, but there was a lot of how do you make these books new and interesting? And I think that was the first. Maybe I'm wrong here, but that's the first really big reboot I remember. That and
considering the last major one was Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1986, and so the New 52 was the big relaunch that it helped me. Because I got to read comics I was not reading before because of the reboot, and then Rebirth did the same thing. But and
I think there's something. There's always a good. You always get some good stuff out of reboots.
Oh yeah.
But sometimes I think I'm very wary of if they keep doing it. Yeah. There's just this diminishing returns where eventually you're it's sort of like when you see a movie I don't know if you one thing about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we don't have to get into this stuff. I know I'm all over the place.
No, don't worry about it. I love it.
Yeah, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. One thing that's so impressive to me is that it's 16, 18 movies now, and they haven't rebooted at all. No. There are so many other franchises that have done 1 or maybe 2, and then the third one fails, and they're okay, we're gonna the third one never happened. We're gonna redo it. Or that just shows the testament, or we're gonna reset it, and it just shows how much forethought they put into this, that they were able to craft this thing that even entries that may not be as quality as the other ones, you can get through them, and they are part of that world, and it's just they created a universe that even its weakest link can't destroy it, as opposed to some franchises where it's you get to the third one and you're oh man, if this one fails, it's all the Transformer universe feels like they hit that third one and they were uh-oh, what do we do? And so that's what that's where I worry sometimes. The comics is like that thing where like let's restart it all. I'm like, don't do that. Just let it, it'll be fine. It's a river. It'll keep flowing. It's good.
I like that. It's a river. It'll keep flowing because I know one certain publisher that's about to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That.
But going back to New 52 really quick, I think the three non-Batman characters that succeed. Okay, Batman. I would say Batman. The three characters that were not Batman that really thrived because of New 52 was Wonder Woman, which because of Brian Azzarello, who did a great run. Aquaman, Jeff Johns. I was so grateful to him. And then Nightwing. Nightwing became this thing, and so when Forever Evil happened, and he basically had to stop being Nightwing. It was crushing. I was just like, what the heck? So
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I
I know.
love
I love Azzarello's Wonder Woman was fantastic.
Yeah.
Like that whole, I remember that issue that talks about how they would go out to ships and basically
Yeah.
we'll get into it. Like that was awesome. I was like, oh, that makes sense. That's probably what would happen.
Yeah, probably. So
Yeah.
Okay, let's get. What were we talking about? Oh, Power Rangers, right? Power Rangers.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Oh, we can talk about comics in general.
I talk to you for hours on that, but I know you have a time limit. So, you don't have to say that they're in the series in the event, but I want to ask you, as a Power Rangers fan. Oh, I got to word this correctly because I'm trying not to put you into a spot. I'm trying to be kind here, and okay. Just generally, who are some of your favorite Rangers all time? Again, regardless of they're in Shattered Grid or not, but like, who are some of your favorite Rangers of all time?
Well, here's the honest part. And this might lose your respect for me. Here's the thing.
Oh, boy.
I have not seen a lot of the Power Ranger series. I'm going to be honest.
That's okay.
So I was a little, I was like 14 when it first came, when Mighty Morphin came out.
That's fair.
And so I was already sort of moving into like, hey, there's girls. So like I was sort of already started. Yeah, exactly. Oh. But like I started like kind of slipping away from that. So I watched the Mighty Morphin, the first series. And then I started kind of drifting off, and I've caught up here and there and watched some stuff, and so, but my experience is pretty limited. But I will say, like, the series that I liked the most is I really liked I like SPD. I think SPD was cool. That one just, I thought the concept of that one was really good, with the A and the B team.
Oh,
Am I getting there? Yeah, like it was just such a great. It was such a. They used the mystery of what had happened to the A team, and then so you created this really great, like, sort of not to bring back the Nightwing kind of thing of like taking up the mantle of these people, and like, oh my gosh, can we do this? And then what was so great is by the time they discovered that they could, you brought back the A team, and now they're the bad guys.
Yeah, I love that.
And I was like, wow, it was just such a smart approach to that story. I think it's honestly one of the smartest. Like, just as an overall story, I thought that was really one of those things where I was like, that's how you should use the franchise, like a really great way. So that was my favorite.
I just want to interject here. Like, one of my favorite Rangers all time, my favorite is Sky from SPD, and I loved him because he had one of the best arcs in all time. Because he was, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be Red Ranger, and then it's just like, then you find out why he wants to be Red Ranger, and then at the end, when Doggy Kruger, another great character, was like, if I gave Bridge the Red Ranger morpher, would you follow him? It was like, I would follow any of my teammates into battle, and then he became Red Ranger, and it was like, that was payoff, and I was like,
it was awesome. They really did a good job with that, and that's the stuff that I think, like, there's, and almost all the series have some of that, but that one I thought was really just really constructed well. I was like, that was the one that's sort of that's my top one in regards to, like, if I'm doing, like, if I was ever going to do a TV series, like, I would look at that structure and be like, that's the way to do it. Yeah. Not to say that I would do that I'm doing a TV series, I'm not, but just FYI. But yeah, I like that one a lot. And then I haven't seen RPM, but I heard that one's okay. See, that this is why the Doctor Who thing. That reaction right there of like, maybe yes, maybe no. It's interesting. Some people love RPM, and some people hate RPM. Yeah. And I think that's what's so cool about the franchise is you have people on both sides. Yeah. That's great.
That's just fandom, and that's the way it is. For me, I liked this like we talked about the timelines in different dimensions. That was the one where I was like, there is no way this is on the same Earth, Right. And later on they admitted that it was a parallel Earth dimension, and it's just like. And this is not a diss on Power Rangers per se, but in recent seasons, I'd say, I don't know, Samurai On, they went a little too cheesy with some of the characters. And RPM is that balance, if you will, between the cool characters like the Black Ranger, the Red Ranger, and then you have Ziggy. And then you have, the professor, who was this
Right.
cool robot who turned out to be, a 4 foot high girl. No offense to any 4 foot people out there. I'm just saying character wise. And
Right.
it's just like, what's going on here? And then like they balanced, like humans and robots and all that stuff. And then, but then you had, these weird things. It was like, stop hurting my head. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I actually got into this argument, not argument with Kyle, but more of a discussion. Like, I think it was Kyle. It was more like it's interesting how, because the show is for kids in a lot of ways, and yet there's a lot of people from all ages really like it, and it's funny how some people. I think it's like when you're a kid, you sort of just you sort of watch it just to watch it. Like you just don't really know. You're just like you like something or you don't, right?
Yeah.
And then when you get older, sometimes it's like, well, I want the product to evolve with me. I want the stuff to become adult like me. It's like, but does it have to? Like, can't stuff just be for the age it was intended? And you don't have to like take like there's something that's almost. I don't know. It's like there's something selfish about not allowing the stories that you grew up on as a kid that you want them to be suddenly like you want them to suddenly be to give you more than for you because you're at an age where you can appreciate more.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with it, and I think there's definitely examples of material out there like a lot of the Pixar movies that do both of those things, but not everything has to be Pixar. I guess my main point is and I feel like Power Rangers is like. They're already doing such a like it's the way that they make that show. Like if you go to a non-Power Ranger fan and explain to them what the Power Rangers are, it's just like the most fascinating look on their face ever. They're like, so wait, it's a series from where? And they take half the footage and they shoot it here.
Yeah.
But then they've been doing it for how long?
Yeah.
And some of them are from different series. Like it's so funny to try to explain it.
Yeah, and then when you find out like the behind the scenes stuff, it's hilarious.
Oh my god, it's hysterical.
I had the honor of at a Comic-Con last year. I actually got to host a Power Rangers panel. It was one of the highlights of my year.
Oh, awesome.
I got to meet the Titanium Ranger. I got to meet Trent from Dino Thunder and Ethan from Dino Thunder. And so we're talking about this, and I felt I knew like what was going on behind the scenes. And then I was like, what was it like being in the outfits? And Titanium Ranger, Ryan Mitchell. I just blanked on his real name. Crap, never mind. But he's like, oh man, it was good because he was a special. He was literally a U.S. Ranger. Like they did the storyline in Japan, but they never really had the Ranger, and then they created a new Ranger for this one. And then the guy who played Trent was like, I never wore the outfit except for a promo.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, what? You played Trent for that long? Well, okay. If you know, Dino Thunder played Trent, but I mean, it's like you played Trent for that long and didn't wear the outfit. He goes, I had it once, and he had the helmet, and it was great. But it's just like
that's killer.
One time,
that's like I'm gonna be Spider-Man, but you only get to be Peter Parker.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like
that would suck. Wow, that's crazy. That's funny. Yeah, it's so fascinating. This is sort of a thing. I told the editors at one point if we could, I want to do the comic. I want to do an issue of Go-Go the same way that they do the TV show. I want Dan Mora, the artist, who's amazing, by the way. Yeah. I want him to draw 10 pages of action without telling me what it is. Yeah. And then I get to see it, and then I'll write the story around the action.
Oh, I love it. I think
it's fun. Yeah.
That's good. So let's, we got a few more minutes, but we talked about Draken, like right at the beginning of the podcast, and
yeah,
I think for me that's one of the most interesting things about Shattered Grid, and you reveal about how Kyle had the forethought to bring Draken into this at the beginning. Do you think that Shattered Grid as an event only works because of an original character like Draken?
That's a good question. I don't think so.
Well, the reason I say that is this: is that when Megaforce happened, the teaser at the beginning of the series was every Ranger ever is coming. There will be the every Ranger ever event, and they, within the context of Megaforce with the keys and everything, it made sense that they could do that.
Yes.
Somehow.
Yeah.
There's still the logic and all that, but
right.
But then with Shattered Grid, you kind of can't do that because they're like, well, if Mighty Morphin knew that Time Force was coming, then they might do things differently. But because of Draken, who is a multiversal character, and now has traveled between worlds and knows that there's a lot more going on here. Does that make it work easier? Because it's not like now you don't have to say I'm not polluting the timeline because Draken's trying to destroy it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you make a really good point. Like the question is like, could you, if you did it with Rita, like, would that work the same way? And probably not. You're probably right. In some ways, I think the idea that Draken sort of exists in his own world, but that is sort of disconnected from all of the other dimensions and realities and whatnot, and that allows him to sort it since he's already sort of there. It's just a hop, skip, and a jump to the next level. Yeah, I think you're probably right. Like it would definitely makes it easier. Because you're right, because the continuity is so tied together in certain ways. If you were to use a villain from the other, like what's the one in space? What's the they're fighting what army? The clock or what's the heck is it?
No, in space.
Yeah.
Oh, they're fighting Astronema and
You're right.
Dark Spectre.
Yeah, like if you used Astronema, like it wouldn't work the same way, would it? Like,
no.
Yeah, it would exactly. Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think creating a unique character that is sort of in his own world and outside of the other things allows it. It sort of allows for easy pivots. So yeah, I would say you're probably right about that. Yeah.
Okay. Which brings me to the other original character that's coming via Shattered Grid, which I will not be so kind on. For those who haven't heard, outside of Lord Draken, there is going to be an entirely new Power Ranger created specifically for this event. What can you tell us? Obviously, you can't say names, and like the look is being. They did like the silhouetted cover look, and that's fine. I'm not asking that, but what can you tell us about this Mystery Ranger?
I will say that the Mystery Ranger is a familiar face that has connections to all of the Rangers in the Go-Go comic book. They have a familiar face that have what I mean. They have a familiar face and they have emotional connections to all of those people. Like that, this person wearing the Ranger, being a Ranger, is going to have impact on them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. So that's what I mean when it starts to that. So the way that they fit in, that's the reason I wanted to bring that character into the story was because of what it does to the team.
So we will see this Mystery Ranger in Go-Go.
Are you going to see him? You're going to see a Mystery Ranger in Go-Go, yes.
Yes. Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
At some point. I'm not saying you've seen him before. I'm saying you will see them.
I mean, in Shattered Grid. We will see them in the Shattered Grid.
There's a new Ranger in Shattered Grid. Yes, you will see them. Yes.
All right.
Sorry.
All right.
See, it's very hard. You have to be. I'm so scared of what I'm saying. I don't want to get anybody mad at me. I'm very young at this. I don't, I don't know what I'm doing sometimes, and I'm like, do I say this? Do I not say this? I'm figuring it out. And watch, I'm gonna get a call from Boom and Saban like in 15 minutes. It's gonna be great.
What do you mean you told them about this? We're supposed to reveal that. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. This is me. It wasn't me. Somebody else. It's Ryan Parrott.
Host. Blame the host.
But yeah, they come in and they bring a lot of tension and they bring a lot of emotional friction and things. And I mean that's really all I can say about them. They will make the team sort of re-examine some things that and also I think what was cool about bringing the Ranger in at this point was because Go-Go takes place so early on with them, like they've only made the Megazord a few times. Like they don't know, like they're still learning about their powers.
Yeah.
They're still trying to figure out what it's mean to be a team. Like how do they keep things quiet? How do they embrace this stuff? How do they have regular lives while doing this? So seeing another Ranger that might be at a different place in their world of being a Ranger, you know what I mean? Like it'll give them perspective that they might not have had before. And I think that's the fun. That was the fun thing. Like, it's sort of like whenever, like if you do any, I don't want to say that because I'll get me in trouble. Literally, I was about to go down a path.
We can edit that out. Yeah.
But that was the fun thing about it. Was like, because it's a prequel series in some ways, that this Ranger coming in it was a really nice mirror to them. That's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
I like that. All right.
This does not take place in the Star Trek Mirror Universe, though. Just FYI.
That was okay. Just gonna cross that fan theory off right there. All right. So wrapping it up, in your opinion, and feel free to go as wild as you want, why should people read Shattered Grid?
Why should? If you're a Power Ranger fan and you've at all enjoyed any of the comic books, I think Shattered Grid is sort of a must read because it's going to. expand the Power Ranger universe in ways that I don't think we've actually been able to see that before. And because I think also because of the fact that people involved, everybody really like the Kyle and Daphne and the people at Saban and Matt and
there's
and
math
Mike.
here because like how many Rangers do you have
Yeah.
in panels?
No, like all the people at Boom, all the people at Saban, like they really love these characters. They really love this franchise, and they're so smart, and because they have such a strong affection for this world, it's going to get done right, I think. I can't guarantee my stuff's going to be that good, but everybody else's stuff's great.
Come on.
But I think that's my pitch for it. It's like if you've liked anything you've read, this thing is just going to expand on things that you've always probably wanted. There was stuff that Kyle's pitched me that I'm like, dude, I'd always want to see. That's a great thing. So there's like lots of little things that he's come up with that I never would have imagined, and he's really sort of expanded on. Like I always loved in the Draken run. I always loved the stuff about the sentries, like like how Draken had taken the coins and expanded them out. So there's like 100 to 1,000 black Mastodon sentries. I was like, that's so cool. Like I love that stuff. And there's more of that type of thinking in Shattered Grid. So yeah, I mean, Kyle's got a he's got a really good handle on the voices, and he really cares about these people. So I think it shows in the comic. So.
All right.
My best pitch.
All right. Well, we thank you for joining us here on Following the Nerd. I personally look forward to Shattered Grid, both Mighty Morphin and Go-Go. So Shattered Grid starts with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 25, that's just symmetry. I like that. Yeah.
Yep. 25th anniversary. That was. You don't think that was right. that was purpose?
Yeah, that was the purpose. I remember Kyle saying that now. So yeah, that's pretty good. So yeah, it starts off with 25, and then with Go-Go in number 9, with 8 being the prelude. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Do we have an exact date for Power Rangers 25?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
If 24 came out this month, then I'm guessing
it literally just came out last week. So.
Okay, yeah. So probably 30 days from that or something along those lines. If that's how that works. Yeah. So we'll see.
So,
but yeah, thanks for having me on, man. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. And again, if you are a Power Rangers fan, go check out Shattered Grid. Starts next month.